So let's go to another lesson. Lesson number 7 is we are all getting stupider, and I am too. We are all getting stupider, and I am too. And this lesson is related to what I'm seeing, and I'm sure many of us are seeing, of how the polarization that we have, that's really strongly exacerbated by social media, um, of how we think about things, of how everything becomes political and how everything becomes so black and white, and everything becomes us versus them. Us, the good, smart, moral, caring, here in America, the American patriotic side, and the other side being stupid, immoral, even hating, America, or wanting to do destructive things, and all the bad things. That we're making everything seem like it's that black and white. And what I'm seeing is that it's making all of us a lot dumber. We're becoming more stupid. Our ideas are getting worse. Even our intellectuals are getting stupider. And I'll hopefully touch on those different things. So to begin with, I think of a sports analogy when I am thinking about our ideas and the ways that we think, which I'll get to, because I just see people talking online about things, and they think they're making a strong argument, but there's absolutely nothing to what they're saying. It is so empty and devoid of any kind of real convincing content, or persuasive argument, or even information or evidence, or even how they're presenting it doesn't even make sense, but they think they're making such a strong point because we're all talking to people that already agree with us. And when that happens, we get made to feel like we're saying something that makes sense, but it just makes sense to someone who already agrees with us. It's actually kind of like in religion, where people sometimes think they're saying something very profound, but it's only going to feel profound or feel good to someone who already agrees with the rest of the things you already believe in the religion. And sometimes people think, oh, how could anyone not see things the way that we do? Look at this and this and this. Even like in talking about like existence of the proof that God exists, that, oh, this happened and this happened, so how can you say God doesn't exist? He made this happen. He made it rain the day that we were going to have that picnic, so we were all indoors, and then these two people met each other and fell in love. Like, of course God exists. And I definitely can't say God does not exist, but I have a hard time dealing with sometimes these conceptions that we can know why God does the things that he does. If he exists, it's kind of this contradiction. If you believe in this all-powerful God, all-knowing, and has infinite wisdom and made the whole universe, and it does things that we can't even understand, then how could you then say, I know why he did something? In such a small scale way. These two people met each other. This thing happened. In the grand scheme of things, to me, it's hard to make sense of those things, or to think that those things make sense. But anyway, I'll leave that aside. Coming back to this idea of how we're all getting stupider, that sports analogy that I was talking about is, imagine a player, let's say a basketball player, they want to get better at playing basketball. The first way they can start is they just practice on their own, right? So they have let's say a basketball hoop, and they dribble and they shoot, and they keep working on different skills and techniques, and that can help them get better for sure. That definitely does help. But then the next level would be, okay, they join a team, and now when they join a team, they practice with the teammates, and they have scrimmages where they play against each other, and this definitely helps them much more than playing on their own. But of course, when they're playing with their own teammates, they might try, but they're not going to go that hard. First of all, they're teammates, and they kind of maybe take it a little bit easier, but also no one wants to get injured in practice, and so they're not going as hard as they would in a real game, but they're still getting some sense of practice through that. That's much more meaningful than playing on their own when there's no opponent there. And then there's the next level of that team playing against other players and another team. And now they're going against each other. Both sides are trying their best to win. And this would be the best way for any individual player, also the team, but any individual player to become better at the game, to get better, let's say here at basketball. What we're seeing happening in an intellectual way, the analogy that for me is fitting here, is that people are studying on their own, and that can be good. And often you have to do that, and you need some level of that. Uh, and so for your ideas, they can go far. You know, you're hearing other people's ideas. You might think for yourself and reflect, but that's good. Then there's the next level of playing with a team, and so I think that's unfortunately where we're stopping now in the intellectual spheres, that people are just talking to people that already agree with them. At least the meaningful conversations are like that. We're yelling at each other with people we disagree with. But as far as having conversations, it's with your own team. So you're saying there, hey, I think this. Yeah, you're so right. I think this, and it might sometimes help you hear a different perspective on the idea that you already agree with, which is something. It might even help you argue your point better. It's not giving you a fuller picture of what's going on, but it helps a bit. But unfortunately, that's where we're stopping. And so what we see is when you're online, people are talking with people they already agree with. Even actually in social life, people tend to talk to people they already agree with. And then online, they're hearing the voices of people that just confirm what they already think and they believe, and it makes us feel even better. In a way, contrary to the sports analogy, it actually makes a lot of our game weaker. It makes us weaker in a lot of ways too. But even still, maybe we hear different things, we hear different points of view, we get more information, albeit one-sided, and we're stopping there. And I think that's really, really unfortunate, is that we are losing, first of all, the arts of genuine debate, critical thinking, learning from one another, the exchange of ideas that we need. We're losing that, and people are just thinking they know what they know, or they're right about what they know, because it's just getting reinforced over and over. It's actually, now that I'm saying it, reminds you of when you're studying for a test and you keep looking over the same notes over and over again. And I've definitely remember this happening, is that when you're looking at the notes over and over again, it just seems so obvious. Like, yeah, of course I know this is this and that's that. You even know what, let's say a key word is coming up next. You've basically memorized your notes. Then you go into the test where you don't have those notes and it's not presented that same way, and all of a sudden you can't think of some of the answers because it's not presented in that same way. So the notes gave you this false sense of confidence that you know things because you kept going over the same thing, but your genuine comprehension and deeper knowledge about the issues and the topics was not so good. And so it's kind of the same thing, maybe obviously slightly different, with what's happening with our ideas. People think, oh yeah, I think, cutting the taxes or raising the taxes or whatever the issue is, this is the way you do it. And then they talk to 20 different people that agree with them, and it just makes it seem like, of course, we're so right. Look at these other people that agree with me. Look at the ways they're talking about it and presenting it. And so it's just, that's it. That's where things end. And then what you see happening is when people have debates, I mean, maybe not even debates, let's just even say comment sections, the things that people think qualify as a good argument are so weak. I mean, shockingly weak. Now, when they talk to their own team, they said, rah, that was right. Of course, like what you're saying makes sense. Like, how could someone see it another way? But they're not realizing that that was just against their own team or with their own team. But going in against an actual opponent, that same argument will hold no water or no weight and won't get very far or make a lot of sense. But we're stuck in this stupidity of thinking that's enough, or that's a good enough of an argument. So unfortunately, I'm seeing that we are getting a lot stupider in the ways that we think about things. And so it's these things, and also related to that, this kind of culture of if you have an opinion on something, you have to be absolutely certain of it, both absolutely certain of what it is and what the right answer is, but also absolutely certain that you can't be wrong. So we're losing all sorts of intellectual humility, in the sense of really trying to understand the nuance of things, but also in acknowledging that I could be wrong about this. This is what I think right now. This is how I feel about it right now, let's say even, but it could be wrong. Or with more information, more learning, more reflection, my opinion could change over time. Not because I'm flip-flopping, but because I'm becoming more informed and evolving. It's actually a way of growing rather than flip-flopping as a weakness. It's a sign of strength to change our opinion when we get more knowledge, more information, or contradicting information from what we thought at the time that we came to our opinion and that conclusion at that time. But we're losing all of this type of intellectual humility and going towards this place that the person who is the smartest is the most certain about things. And unfortunately, even if they're certain about something that we can't be certain about, which should be disqualifying, it's almost become the opposite, that if you're uncertain, that's disqualifying. So if a scientist makes a prediction and says, it seems likely that this is happening, or, we have an 80% chance of this happening, that should be more respected than someone says, there's no other way, it's going to be this way for sure. But people are turning more towards individuals who are certain about things that are uncertain, which is actually puzzling, but that's really where we're at. I mentioned this earlier, that our desire for certainty is so strong. This is another reflection of that, or manifestation of that. So I'm concerned because I see how stupid we are getting. And I mentioned even our intellectuals. I've seen so many, I would say, very smart people, because you see them talking about things and they seem very smart, and they make some great points. But then over time, almost all of them, it's like they get crushed by the weight of their own popularity, because it takes away from what made them smart, what made them intelligent, was that they thought for themselves. But now they're catering to a certain audience. They want to keep their followers or keep growing their followers, so they tend to skew a certain way, because people are, there's a lot less nuance. So either I have to agree with you on everything, or I agree with you on nothing. And so I'm just seeing intellectual people who have seem to make some kind of intellectual conclusion or a contribution, become very stupid over time, that they're making arguments that are just laughable, that they're presenting them, but it's getting more attention, and continuing that attention, so they don't mind. Because what gets attention is saying things that some people strongly agree with and other people strongly disagree with, because both of them are likely to share your material. The people that agree with you, like, look at this great intellectual, it confirms that I'm right, because look at this smart person saying that I'm right. And so they love that. They're going to share that. And people on the other side, like, look at this idiot that people think is smart, or look at this guy and how ridiculous he is or she is. And they think this, and that also gets shared. So the things that polarize people, that make them have strong feelings, even if they're not good feelings or even good for society, those things get more and more attention. And so unfortunately what happens is, these intellectuals, rather than continuing what made them get initial attention, or what I should say gave them good ideas, or able to create good ideas, which was thinking for themselves and reflecting and then coming to a place within themselves that they then share, it's almost like they are just creating their ideas with these outside forces. It's not coming from within. It kind of reminds me of an artist who might initially make some very meaningful music that touches people's hearts, but then becomes so popular and wants to create, keep their popularity. So now they start making very shallow pop music just to, attract attention. And so it might get a lot of attention. They might, even make more money, but the value of the art, or the genuine authenticity of the art, has gone away. And so I think similarly, we're seeing that with intellectuals, that they are becoming stupider because they are not going from that place of the quality of the arguments, the quality of the information they're sharing, and it's just what gets the most attention. And I think this is really sad to see, and really hurtful and harmful. And later I'll also talk in other lessons about the feeling we get when someone, dunks on someone, in the kind of intellectual sense, that they make someone look stupid, and why we might be drawn towards that. But overall, there is this concern I have of all of us getting stupider because of these different dynamics and themes that are there, that we are not really challenging the ideas that we have. Another topic I'll talk about is identify politics rather than identity politics. We so strongly identify with what we believe that it's too scary to acknowledge that we might be wrong. And so because of that, we are clinging to these kind of, we think, absolute truths that aren't absolute truths. Also, just on a side note about the intellectuals, you'll often see these intellectuals that then align with certain either political parties, or even more problematic, a politician, a specific individual. And then they have to justify that everything they're doing is right. Often that's how they'll present things, and this will definitely make you very stupid, because no one is perfect, especially no one is perfect in making big decisions and making policy decisions and trying to make things go a certain way. And if you have to defend everything that someone does, you will basically by definition have to be very stupid. Again, we're losing that intellectual humility. We're losing that nuance of things that even someone who is very smart says or does things that's wrong. Even someone you like or agree with will do things you disagree with and you dislike. The nuance of things is being lost, and we are becoming stupider because we are only talking with people we agree with, or stupid people we disagree with, or people that don't really have much to contribute, but we just want to disagree with them. It's unfortunate that we're seeing this, and I hope we can all recognize this, because as I say this, I've definitely fallen victim to this too, that it's so comforting to feel so right and to feel people that agree with you or listen to people that agree with you, and that show that the other side is so stupid. There's something very comforting in that. But like so many things that comfort us, we have to recognize that it's interfering with our growth and values that we likely will hold that are bigger than that comfort. And so that's why lesson 7 is we're all getting stupider, and I am too.